To the astonishment of the residents of the Gavahi Road and the relief of nationalists throughout Ireland, the RUC stood firm. The Orangemen were thwarted. In remarkable scenes reminiscent of 1969, we watched army and police feted by nationalists. But beyond the estate, the crisis grew more acute by the hour. Under the auspices of the Northern Ireland Office, Ireland's most senior churchmen, Cardinal Daly and Archbishop Eames, stepped in to try and broker a solution between the two sides. Finding a solution was even more difficult because the Orangemen refused to talk with the leader of the Gavahi Road residents, Brendan McKenna. They regard him as a convicted terrorist who helped destroy their town. If the Loyalists had been looking for an excuse not to compromise, then Mr. McKenna's record was ready and waiting. Is the Gavahi Residents Association a front for the provisional IRA and Sinn Féin?
No, I wouldn't say it was a front.
That's what the unionists are saying. That's why they won't talk to them.
Well, I would say that what they mean is that the leader of that association has a previous conviction for terrorist crime.
Well, you talked to him.
Well, I did talk to him, but then I feel it's my duty to talk to anybody to resolve public disorder.
So why won't the Orangemen talk to him?
You must ask Mr. Trimble and others.
Why wouldn't the Orangemen talk face-to-face with the residents of the Gavahi Road?
Well, they weren't going to talk face-to-face with Sinn Féin. And as you know, the person that was put up as the spokesman for this so-called residents group was a person who is a convicted Republican terrorist. A person, incidentally, who doesn't live on the Gavahi Road. And the group of the Residents Coalition that you referred to had an executive which was dominated by Sinn Féin supporters, not numerically, but in terms of influence.
On Wednesday morning, NIO officials met the residents at a hall on the estate to prepare the ground for a compromise. In their confidential minute of the meeting, the NIO clearly recognised Mr. McKenna as broadly representative. The minute concludes by offering a carrot if the residents are prepared to compromise. The role of the Gavahi Road residents would be recognised and valued by the government, and it would set up a fully independent review of the marching phenomenon. Throughout Wednesday, David Trimble tried to get loyalists from moderate to extreme to sign up to a compromise. His problem was with the extremes. There were indications that the Loyalist showdown with the RUC was being orchestrated by local paramilitaries, and they were warning the Orangemen not to compromise on any account.
What I would say is that I believe paramilitary influence on both sides led to a situation that when a deal was almost brokered, it was prevented from becoming a deliverable deal.
You saying that paramilitaries stopped any compromise?
I believe that they had a significant influence. I also believe that the Orange Order had a clear determination they wanted to go down their route, come hell or high water. I believe had it not been for paramilitary influence, I believe it would have been possible to broker a deal.
Are you saying this is paramilitary influence on one side or both sides?
Both sides.
How do you know that?
Special branch sources.
Intelligence.
I'm in no doubt about it whatsoever. Absolutely none.
On Wednesday evening, I was sitting here in the church hall chatting with the Orangemen and their wives, who were making sandwiches and cakes and endless cups of tea. There was no film crew with me at the time. At about 6:30, a worried-looking David Trimble came into the hall. He went straight up the stairs behind me and into the room at the top. He was holding a secret dialogue, not just with the Orangemen, but certain individuals with strong connections to the outlawed loyalist paramilitary organisation, the Ulster Volunteer Force, the UVF. One of those key figures present was a Portadown loyalist called Billy Riot. Mr. Riot is a former loyalist UVF prisoner. At the bottom of the stairs stood some of Mr. Riot's friends, presumably there to discourage any curious visitors. The meeting lasted for over an hour. Were you concerned about the reaction that Mr. Riot and his colleagues may have to the situation?
Well, we were in a rather volatile situation there, and we knew it was volatile.
Might Mr. Riot have made it more volatile?
We were very anxious that the paramilitaries would not break their ceasefire.
Did you say that to Mr. Riot?
I did, and we said that to the paramilitaries generally.
What did you say to Mr. Riot about his responsibilities?
We said we didn't want any violence.
David Trimble was not in negotiation with me.
But you were there.
But I am aware of what was required of, or what was being asked of the loyalist community in Portadown. The price that was to be extracted for the Drumcree Parade to be allowed to walk. And I have to say that basically the fundamental issue was, had anyone the right to demand who walks where?
Why are you talking to someone that you would regard as a loyalist, paramilitary, former prisoner and terrorist?
I've done that before. We are dealing with people who are on a ceasefire.
So why won't Orangemen talk to former convicted IRA prisoners to try and solve the situation?
The IRA ceasefire, you will notice, has ended.
BBC Radio Ulster News, this is Martin Donnan. Shots were fired at police in Lurgan during another night of violence.
Early on Thursday morning, the two sides met at a carpet factory at the bottom of the Gavahi Road. The churchmen acted as go-betweens. A deadline was set. If there was no agreement by 10:30 that morning, the chief constable was free to act as he wished.
We've understood that there was a deadline of 10:30.
Set by who?
That is a question I should like an answer to that. Who set the deadline?
Presumably set by the Northern Ireland office.
I don't know. I'd like to know.
At the 11th hour, on the morning of the 11th of July, in the carpet factory, you have a group of Orangemen in one room and a group of Gavahi Road residents in another, and the Orangemen won't talk to the residents, and therefore there's no solution.
That was supposed to be what Mr. Spring calls proximity talks, and I can't comment, not having been present there. I don't know the detail of it.
But that was because the Orangemen wouldn't involve themselves in dialogue. But there was an opportunity to solve it, and they wouldn't talk to the residents.
But they were there for that purpose. They were there for dialogue. It's the difficulty.
How can you have a dialogue if you don't talk to the people you're supposed to be talking to?
Well, we weren't going to talk to them face to face. That was absolutely clear from the outset. They were there expecting a situation where other people would shuttle back forward between them. There was never any suggestion that it would be a face-to-face meeting.
And it didn't work.
It didn't work in the time available. And that time was quite limited because the Northern Ireland office had put a time limit on it. 1.5 hours. I think a matter like this is going to be sorted out in 1.5 hours.
The deadline was set by the NIO officials to give the Chief Constable room to move, should he choose to do so, well before the flashpoint of the evening arrived. Before you make the decision, but you know you're going to make it,
Yes.
do you discuss it with the Secretary of State?
No, I did not.
Do you ring his office and say, I'm
not.
going to change my mind, the march is going through?
I got a message from the church leaders that they had failed. I did speak as a matter of interest to 2 of the church leaders to express my concern, but the moment I got the message that they could not deliver an accommodation, I forthwith gave a direction to the Deputy Chief Constable and the Regional Assistant Chief Constable to take the Gavahi Road for the reducing of public order problems and to push the march through.
Do you not talk to the Prime Minister before you make the decision, in the hours before, the day before?
Good heavens, no.
Or the Secretary of State? Given the implications of your change of mind.
The Secretary of State was briefed by me in the presence of the General Officer Commanding that we had a seriously deteriorating situation. Of course we did. But you're coming round, if you will forgive me, in a full circle to this notion that there was political interference in these decisions, and there was not.
The reason we're coming round to it, Chief Constable, is that people find it inconceivable that at no point was there any input from either the Secretary of State or the Prime Minister or his office, given the seriousness of your change of heart. People find it impossible to believe that, despite what you say. That's why I come round to it again.
Well, I'm sitting here and I'm telling you, I briefed the Secretary of State in the presence of the General Officer Commanding about a seriously deteriorating situation. The Secretary of State was very sympathetic to that. His view was it is an operational decision. And it is an operational decision.
It may be an operational decision, but it is one that has enormous political consequences. Certainly, most people would expect the Prime Minister and the Secretary of State to have a direct interest in the implications of your decision.
Well, of course they had a direct interest, but they didn't intervene, which is the issue.
There's a great crisis of credibility and confidence It's widely known, it's widely felt that truth has not been told. Now, I'm not pointing a finger at anyone, I'm just saying there is a wide perception, there is a crisis of credibility and confidence. People quite literally don't believe most of the stories they've been told, and they wonder what is the truth.